Okay. So the last time we got together in class, we collected some data for the Penny Lab. And what everybody did when they were in class is they collected data for the post 1982 pennies. And if you weren't here, then now is an opportunity for you to get that part of it. The other thing that we need in order to complete this lab is data for the pre 1982 pennies. And I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get that data. So I'm going to tell you to pause your video and record the mass and initial and final volume data for pre 1982 pennies. And if you weren't here the last time we got together, record that data for post 1982 pennies. So go ahead, pause the video, and restart the video once you've completed copying your data. All right. So now that you're back and you've copied all of that down, we're gonna do something with this data. So we're gonna move into the calculation section. And in a chemistry lab, your calculation section has some very specific things that we have to do to keep your data clean and neat. So I tell you that we're going to use something called formula, substitution, and answer, and you need to show work for one trial for each sample of pennies. That means pre 1982 pennies and post 1982 pennies. So we're going to show one worked out example for each of them. Now, we're going to first calculate the volume of our set of pennies, and we're going to do that with our data. So I'm going to start with pre 1982 pennies. And my formula is going to be volume of pennies minus volume final, equals the final volume minus the initial volume. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to look at my data table. And so I'm looking at my pre 1982 pennies now. Here's my final volume. Here's my final volume, and here's my initial volume. So I'm going to take these values here. So I'm going to take the 18.3 milliliters minus the 16.5 milliliters, and I'm going to work that out. So I'm going to take 18.3 minus 16.5, and that gives me a value somewhere around the area of 1.8. And sig figs, so when you're adding sig figs or subtracting sig figs, we're always basing it on the number of decimal spots. So this needs to have that decimal spot there. And so this is going to be 1.8 milliliters. Now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to record it right here, 1.8 milliliters. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show the work for post 1982 pennies. So post 1982 pennies is going to be the same formula, V pennies equals VF minus VI. And I'm going to go up here and grab this information and this information and then complete my formula. So at this point, I would be able to fill in this box here. And now that you've shown the work for one trial of pre 1982 pennies and one trial of post 1982 pennies, you can get the volumes for the 15 pennies and the volumes for the 25 pennies by simply just plugging in the calculator and recording your answer. So if you're working along with me at home, what I would do right now is I'd pause the video and I'd make sure that the rest of these boxes are filled in. the next part of this is we're going to be calculating the density for each trial. And so the density for each trial, you might recall the formula. So this is going to be pre 1982 pennies. So you might recall that the formula for density is equal to mass over volume. And so this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll back up to my data tables, and I'm going to see that the mass for 5 pennies in pre-1982 was 15.55. So I'm going to scroll back down, and that's going to be my mass. So I'm going to take 15.55 grams and put it over the volume for pre-1982 pennies. And when I look up, my volume for pre-1982 pennies for 5 pennies is this right here. So I'm going to put the 1.8 milliliters. So I'm going to take the 15.55 divided by 1.8, and that's going to give me a density that will be equal to like 8.6, like 38888, something like that. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to like have to assess significant figures. So 15.55, some of you are yelling at your computer, is 4 sig figs. 1.8, some of you are yelling at your computer, is 2 sig figs. So my answer has to have 2 sig figs. Oops. So when I take my answer, I'm going to round this, and the 3 does not round that 6 up. So I'm going to simply record 8.6, and that's going to be grams over milliliters. And so that we did that with the pre-1982 pennies. Now we need to do that with the post-1982 pennies. So again, post-1982 pennies. And we know that our formula is density is equal to mass over volume. And then we're going to scroll back up, and we're going to grab the mass here, and that's going to be our new mass here. So that was 12 point, I forget. Thought I had it. 12.51. So that's going to be 12.51 grams, and that's going to be over whatever you got here. So that's going to go here. And then you'll just record that answer in this box here. So that's going to be the work that you're going to have to do with your data. The next thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to calculate the average. And so we're going to take density. So our average formula is density of 5 pennies plus the density of 15 pennies plus the density of 25 pennies. And I'm putting that in parentheses because that's kind of important for how you plug this into your calculator. And then we're going to divide by 3. So you take the density plus the density plus the density, and you hit equals, and then you divide by 3. And it's really important. And then you'll record that value here, and you'll do the same thing for your post-1982 pennies as well. So those are the calculations that you have to do. And I'm going to pause, or I'm going to stop this video now so you can get that caught up. And then I'm going to take a moment and start a new video about the graph. So in this case here, this is the video about the Penny Lab calculations. And we'll do the graphing video.